Definitely. I mean, personalizing a vaccine is basically, as I said, every tumor is different. It's like a fingerprint. So what we do is we can obtain the tumor and sequence it, like completely sequence it and identify the specific mutations that are for that specific tumor. After you identify these mutations, we can then synthesize a vaccine that matches these mutations.
Hello, everyone. I have eclectic tastes, and I guess that those of you who listen to me regularly have too, or else you wouldn't bother to pay me the compliment of tuning in. Now, today my topic and guest are selected largely out of self-interest. We're going to examine immunology. Why? Because for more than 20 years there have been, how can I put it, tussles within my own immune system triggered by prostate cancer. I've survived. And I've learned a lot over the past 20 or more years, though I'm still ignorant of many things, as you'd expect. So once again, I've sought out someone who knows. Today I'm sitting with Professor Lana Kandalaft, who is Chief of Clinical and Translational Research at the Swiss Medical Network, at the Genolier Innovation Network, and Director of the Vaccine Program at the Clinique de Genolier. It's a hospital not far from where I live, which I know well, both as a patient and a visitor, having even recorded 2 interviews up here not so many months ago. Now, we'll learn a lot from Professor Kandalaft. She's engaged in fascinating and important work, and I've asked her to answer my questions as simply as possible in non-medical, non-technical jargon, and I'm sure she will. Hello, Professor Kandalaft. Lana, if I may, welcome to the McKay interview. Thank you for inviting me halfway up the Jura Mountains on this beautifully sunny day to talk to you again and learn from you. And thanks for making time for me and our listeners.
Thank you so much, Michael. I'm very happy to be here. It's a pleasure to have another discussion with you. And I'm ready to answer all of your questions.
Okay. Lana, the field of medicine is so vitally important, and the field of knowledge is expanding so fast that the ability for us, whether we've been touched by illness or not, to understand as best we can what is going on is, in my opinion, important. Now, actually, I speak for myself, though I'm pretty sure that many of you listening out there will agree with me. Now, Lana, with your help, we'll try to contribute to that better understanding of immunology today. My first question is this. What is the biggest misconception that the public has about our immune system, if they have any conception at all? And how do you discuss complex medical scenarios and diagnoses with ordinary people like me, for example, who have little or no specialist education?
So I think that many people imagine that the immune system is static, but it's really not the case. The immune system is a system that learns, that forgets, that gets tired, that needs education, that can be actually educated. So one can actually educate the immune system to fight diseases, for example. And this is now what we are using for the treatment of cancer. So we believe in immunotherapy. Immunotherapy is basically utilizing your own immune system to attack cancer cells. And we can go through how this is done, and I can explain further. But basically, the main way of utilizing the immune system is by educating it and unleashing what we call the soldiers of our immune system, which are the T cells. So they are the white blood cells, which people also refer to as T cells. And these are the key. They are the soldiers. And these soldiers can be educated, can be armed, can be woken up to basically recognize tumor cells and attack them.
Oh, I see. Well, you've used lots of active words there, like educate and armed. So I guess as we discuss, you'll probably elaborate a little bit on what this actually means. Because if I close my eyes and try and imagine my T cells, which I can't imagine, being armed and educated, I can't. So you have to help me with that. But I have another question for you. And it's about time and generations. And I ask you this, are we a blessed generation in terms of the advances made in medical science, especially in your field of immunology, compared with our parents and grandparents? Or has medical and research progress moved in a fairly regular, steady, and even linear direction over the past 50, 60, 80 years? What's happened in recent times?
I believe the past 20 years have been really key, specifically for immunotherapy. So we are living in a time where the science has advanced tremendously. The technology has advanced tremendously. We now, with immunotherapy, we didn't know before, basically, that the immune system is an important system to fight cancer. Now we know it is. We can utilize it. And we have the tools to utilize it. We also have the tools to understand that every patient is different, every cancer is different, so personalized therapy is much more efficacious than a one-glove-fits-all approach. So definitely we are in an era where things are happening, and we are blessed to be in that era.
So there were definitely breakthroughs, and so things went up in a step. In terms of progress, more so than just a straight line of progress.
I think there was a leap, in fact. I would say there was a leap specifically in immunotherapy, because what happened was about, let's say 15, 20 years ago, the Nobel Prize was won for immunotherapy.
Oh, I see.
And what the two scientists that have actually discovered that was that they found a way to unlock the brakes. And what does that mean? Basically, when a T cell, we go back to our soldiers and our T cells, when a T cell recognizes a tumor cell, okay, the job normally, if everything's okay, the job is to kill it. So it recognizes it, it kills it. And this is what usually happens, what we want to happen
in a normal
on a normal functional body. So basically, every day we have mutations occurring. We have reasons to believe that we have maybe tumors, small tumors that are starting to come up, and the immune system is working properly. The immune system recognizes these tumors, and they kill them. Now, sometimes, or what happens in cancer is that now these T cells are locked. And they basically are dysfunctional. So these two scientists who won the Nobel Prize for it basically found a way to unblock these brakes. And so then the T cell, the soldier, can be active again and can kill the tumor.
Oh, so you meant breaks in terms of slowing down as opposed to breaks in terms of a gap.
Yes, breaks as in like frein, so to stop it from block it, basically. Block it. The word is maybe better to use block.
Yeah.
So basically T cells are completely blocked. And with these medications that they found, we can now unblock these T cells. So that was the leap.
And this is just 15, 20 years ago, so it's not that long ago.
Not that long ago. But then immediately after, there was a big discovery where what we can do now is basically take these T cells from our body, so collect the T cells, so basically do what we call an apheresis, so we can collect...
Say the word again?
Apheresis,
okay.
Where it's basically we collect the blood, basically isolate the T cells, the soldiers in particular, and then we can engineer them to recognize a mutation or an antigen on the tumor. So in other words, we can engineer them to recognize the tumor, which they did not recognize before. And then we reinfuse them in patients. And here is where they start now killing tumor cells. And the first it got approved. Now it became standard of care in hematological malignancies, so in blood cancers. In solid tumors, it's a bit more complicated, but now in blood cancers, it's approved. Patients are getting them as standard of care. Of course, not in all countries, unfortunately, and probably we will get to that point. But this is another breakthrough of immunotherapy. And finally, we had, as we know, with the COVID era, we had the mRNA vaccines. So vaccines also play part in the immune system, and we can discuss how vaccines can educate these T cells. This is their role. And the mRNA discovery really accelerated the field of vaccination. So a lot is happening during these times.
So just because as you've said a lot in the last couple of minutes, just summarize what the field of immunology actually covers then, so that people who are really focused on this topic, as opposed to maybe some casual listeners, can really understand clearly the areas that you focus on in this grand study of immunology, because it fascinates me.
So me personally, I focus on. So I've been working for a long time on cancer vaccines, and I have done a lot in developing a new cellular therapies in collaboration with many colleagues. So my expertise is really in translating products from bench to bedside, meaning if there's a development happening in the lab and we need a bridge to take it to patients, and this is where I play a role. But more precisely what I do, what my research has been for the past 20 years is on cancer vaccines.
I see. Okay. I wonder what the translation in your title actually meant. So from bench to bedside.
Exactly.
Okay, that's good to know. Well, I wrote down in my notes here, who benefits from this, Lana? How much access is available by those with little means compared with the relatively wealthy? I mean, whenever I visit this place, Genolier, I'm always struck by how sort of otherworldly it is, how peaceful, how sublime. And it's so distant from the busy activity of visiting a public hospital. How many people have access to this wonderful treatment that you've discovered?
So first, in general, these therapies, thanks to science, thanks to all these advancements that we were talking about, these products or these new discoveries make it at the end to the bedside, right? And this is what we need, is to take it to the bedside. Now, when they arrive to the bedside, there's a step. It's a stepwise. So first step is to run the new product in a clinical study. So clinical study is basically running, and this is common practice, is we have to first test the safety of the product, then we have to test the efficacy of the product, and then at some point it makes it to the market, where then everybody benefits. Still, when I say everybody, it takes, we are blessed here in Switzerland, in the US, in other countries. Some countries, they don't even have these medications that are considered the standard of care that patients receive. Patients receive whether you are in a private hospital, whether you're in a public hospital. We have patients receiving all the standard of care. All this that I was talking about is available. In other countries, it's not, unfortunately. Now, when we talk about experimental therapy, it's basically whether you're in a private institution or whether you're in a public institution, if you enroll in a clinical study, you can enroll in a clinical study and you can receive this experimental therapy that is part of the innovation that is happening. So, for example, cancer vaccines at the moment, they are still under experimental therapy. And so, when I was working in a public hospital before at CHUV, which is in Lausanne, the public hospital of Lausanne, we ran clinical studies where everybody was able to, the patients who are, it's not everybody, is the patients who meet the eligibility criteria of a clinical study can benefit. And so now the idea in Genolier is also to create a clinical infrastructure, a clinical research infrastructure to allow innovation to patients here. So it's really not so much about, I would say, the money. It's about the infrastructure and the regulatory infrastructure available to get these therapies to patients.
So you brought me on to the next question very nicely, because I wanted to ask you what you're working on now and why you made the choices as to what you're working on now.
So I'm working on development of new cancer vaccines. And the reason I made that choice is because studying immunology, understanding the immune system, made me believe, I'm convinced as a scientist, that the immune system has a role to play. And one way to boost the immune system and to educate these T cells, we go back to our soldiers, is through vaccination. And so vaccination is a way where we can teach the immune system to understand that, to realize that the cancer is still there, or that there is actually a tumor growing, in a way that is without any side effects. So the quality of life of the patient is not affected. I have done a lot of studies on cancer vaccines when I was in the US before, and the results are very promising. So I continued in that field to really develop these cancer vaccines.
And are you on the edge or on the cusp of something really exciting that you can talk about, or is that confidential?
I believe I can say I'm in the process of launching, hopefully, a clinical trial for cancer vaccines, integrating them with the standard of care, because it's very important to integrate these vaccines with the standard of care, because they do not replace the standard therapy. The standard therapy, whether it's radiotherapy or chemotherapy, is important, and it stays as mainstream. And or even as immunotherapy, because there are drugs, like we call them the checkpoint blockade inhibitors. The vaccine is a complementary approach. So we are working on a protocol trying to integrate these vaccines within the standard of care.
And what great steps forward do you expect in your field over, let's say, the next 20, 30 years? What would you expect to see in the development of your field?
I would expect, I'm very hopeful, and I would expect that vaccines will be integrated in the standard of care, that vaccines can become one of the standard of care treatments. As I said, they would complement what's available. They would be potentially even used for prevention, because as we know, we have a couple of vaccines that are used for prevention, for example, such as HPV vaccine, the Gardasil, which is HPV is a virus that is sexually transmitted. And now, thanks to the science that has been done, we can vaccinate teenagers with HPV vaccines so that they can prevent cervical cancer or penile cancer from occurring. So the reason why this vaccine exists is because we know the cause. We know it's a virus, it's HPV, and so we can vaccinate against it. Problem with cancer is that we don't know the cause. So it's very difficult to prevent what you don't know.
Of course, yeah.
But now with the science, with the innovation that's happening, one can start to predict what can we target, what targets can we target to actually create a preventative vaccine. So for example, in breast cancer, there is a population who have a mutation that is inherited, such as a BRCA mutation, we call it. So one can imagine that patients who have this mutation can be vaccinated for prevention. And so there are some studies in the US already addressing these questions. So that could be something that could happen in the future. However, when I talk about vaccines, at the moment, what's really something more tangible and practical are therapeutic cancer vaccines. And what does that mean? That means that a person has already been diagnosed. We have cancer already. And now, how can we either prevent it from recurring? So we can imagine a case where the patient has had a complete response from the standard chemotherapy or radiotherapy. And then we think, okay, how can we prevent it from recurring? And this is where we can use cancer vaccines as preventative, but it's a prevention of recurrence. And why we can do this is because we know the cancer, so we can study it, and we can create a personalized vaccine against every patient's cancer, thanks to the technology and the science that now we have available.
So you mean that quite literally, that you can personalize a vaccine, or is that just sort of marketing stuff? It really is that special and that particular.
I am a scientist, so marketing is not in my DNA.
Well,
But definitely, I mean, personalizing a vaccine is basically, as I said, every tumor is different. It's like a fingerprint. So what we do is we can obtain the tumor and sequence it, like completely sequence it and identify the specific mutations that are for that specific tumor. After you identify these mutations, we can then synthesize a vaccine that matches these mutations.
Okay.
So it's really amazing what one can do at the moment.
And this must be fairly recent discovery and technology.
It's quite recent.
Yeah.
It's quite recent. And when I was in the US about 15 years ago, we were using, in fact, the tumor itself, because the tumor is, as we said, different amongst every patient. So we would, at time of surgery, instead of throwing the tumor away, because we use part of it for pathology, for diagnosis, but then the rest is basically thrown away or used for research. What we did at that time is we actually conserved it and used it to create a cancer vaccine from the patient's own tumor. So, because at that time we didn't have the sequencing capabilities. And for me, I still believe in this technique because the tumor has everything, has the known and the unknown, and has all the antigens. So we used to treat it so it becomes more immunogenic, meaning, when I say immunogenic, meaning we can allow the immune system to recognize it. So we would treat it to basically unleash these antigens, and then basically we would vaccinate the patient. Now, what we can do is even further. We can sequence all these tumors. Then we can identify what we call antigens, or I can say targets, that could be more immunogenic, that could be more powerful, thanks to all these algorithms and bioinformaticians. Now it's a really new field, and then we can synthesize vaccines that are completely personalized.
Fascinating. For those of you who are tuning in late, my guest today is Professor Lana Kandalaft, and she is Chief of Clinical and Translational Research at the Swiss Medical Network, the Genolier Innovation Network, and Director of the Vaccine Program at the Clinique de Genolier in Switzerland. And we're talking about her important work in immunology. Lana, I spent my earlier career in consumer marketing, in the consumer goods industry. And I remember then, going back in the 1970s, and I think it's still the case today, that 4 out of 5 new products fail. So what I'm interested to know in your medical and clinical research, how many blind alleys do you go down? They must be part of your everyday professional life too. And how frustrating is that? And how expensive is that?
So it's all of the above.
All of the above.
It's all of the above. It's frustrating. It's expensive. But it's not lost, because everything we learn, even if it's negative data, it's something that helps us to develop and to improve for the next product. So yes, I mean, for sure, if everything was positive, we would have cured cancer by now.
Of course.
But it's not. It's not. It's very frustrating. And specifically, So you have it first at the lab level when you're trying to experiment, to create these new products, to test the efficacy in animal models. Then let's say we succeed here. Then the problem is this, what we call death valley, is how do you take your product from bench, literally, to bedside.
Is that what you call it? Death Valley?
There's a death valley there. And the death valley, why is it the death valley? A, because we lack funding, and it's extremely expensive to do it. We lack the know-how, because even the know-how requires funding. Luckily, what my career was for the past years is basically I established this know-how with a wonderful team that I have built in the US and then again in Switzerland and now here in Genolier. So we need the know-how, we need the bridge, we need the infrastructure, and we need the funding. And so after we take it to our patients with a phase 1 study, of course, not all of them make it, not patients, the products. And the products fail, they don't meet our objectives. And it's extremely frustrating because A, we have patients, they're hopeful, we are hopeful, we want these things to work. We never ever use products or do clinical research if the benefit does not outweigh the risk. So that's the criteria, that's very important. But still, even if the benefit outweighs the risk, there's a benefit and there's a benefit, and what we need is success, pure success.
Well, you've already answered the question that I have in my head, which is how globally connected, from a research and intellectual point of view, are you from here? I mean, you're here in the Jura Mountains. It's beautiful. It's tranquil. How much do you have to rely on your own resources here? Or, as you said, you have a team in America, and you're connected with lots of people around the world. Are you working in the similar direction? Is that how it works?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I was in the U.S. I was a professor at University of Pennsylvania. I had a team there, and then I left. I came to Switzerland, where worked at the CHUV and UNIL, which is the University Hospital of Lausanne, and the Hospital of Lausanne. And there I established a huge team, in fact, a center for experimental therapy, a center to take all these concepts from bench to bedside. And I'm still a professor at UNIL. I have my students and I develop vaccines. And yes, I mean, we have to be connected with the world. We exchange ideas. We go to congresses. We share data. And it's very important because we cannot do it alone. And we're not the only one doing this.
Of course.
So, yeah. and it's very nice to see other colleagues in the US doing the same to validate our results and vice versa.
Yeah.
So it's a wonderful community. I would love that there were even more collaborations in the world, but there's actually, unfortunately, competition. But competition sometimes is healthy.
Sure.
But in the case of oncology and cancer, I think everybody's trying their best to advance as fast as possible. But it's biology, it's not predictable, and it's very difficult.
Interesting. Now, we just change, not direction, but change the facet a little bit. At the end of COVID, we were warned by many experts that the next pandemic wouldn't be far away. Where do you think it's likely to come from, Lana? And how could the general public, in your opinion, best prepare itself?
So mostly it would come probably from another animal-based virus or something like that. And yeah, we cannot stop it. So the flu season is coming up. It's already started. So we should vaccinate ourselves. That's important. I don't believe we should be completely in solitude and try not to socialize and not talk to people and cut all this public events. Because it's also it's not good for the brain and for the psyche, but it will come probably, And I think vaccination, immune system is important. So we have to always be as healthy as possible, meaning boost our immune system specifically now in this area. Exercise. I mean, the usual things that probably you know.
Whether children in midlife or elderly people, or does it depend on which stage of life you're in?
You mean to boost the immune system?
In terms of the protection that you should be thinking of. Of course,
elderly people are much more sensitive to having a flu than kids. But again, it really depends. Of course, if there's a pandemic around, you have to protect yourself.
Yes.
But also you cannot remain in your home all day scared that there will be something coming up.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you. I mean, do you have a point of view on governments shutting down economies as happened back in 2020, 2021? I mean, what's been your experience? What does your medical sense tell you if that's the right thing to do?
I think at that time it was necessary to do. Because people were afraid of they didn't know what the consequences were. They needed to do this because it was it was a shock at that time. It was really scary to have that. So it was a must. But I don't know if we overreacted. I don't know whether if it was a normal flu, would we do the same? I think the masks have been now implemented everywhere, and I think even now people use them on daily basis. Even if you don't have COVID, you just have a flu, or you feel that you're a bit symptomatic. So that I think is now something that
But there are, from what I see around me, just in the street, there are masks and masks. Some people wear these very special masks that sort of pinch the face, and other people wear these, masks you buy in the pharmacy. And I've often wondered, how effective the loose ones are compared with the ones that are so tight to the face.
Probably the tight to the face are more effective, but still, by having a mask, by trying not to really exchange by trying to if you're sneezing, just by having the mask, it would probably help.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is what I would believe. But I don't know how the world should react if there's another pandemic. I mean, I have no a real opinion on that.
Okay. Look, something else which always interests me, in a place like this, what is the relationship or the proportion between research done from the public purse compared with being paid for by private enterprise? How's that balance struck? So
the public funding is very important for basic research. So having public hospitals, public universities, it's important to plant the seed, to start this work, all the funds that we get from like the Swiss National Foundation, etc. But the private money is needed to take it to the next level. It's expensive, and the idea, or what's been happening in the US, what's happening here as well, is, public funding can take a product up until proof of concept, but then to take it further for a phase 1B or phase 2, phase 3, and take it to marketing, you would need this private funding. So both are needed, in my opinion.
I see. Again, I was sort of ruminating. Anecdotally, I've heard for years and years that it takes 10 to 15 years to bring a drug through research and to trials. You've already touched on this a little bit earlier in our conversation, and then to approval, and finally to market and for use on patients. But that seems now no longer to be the case. Things go much faster. Or is that just a generalization that it depends on which particular field of medicine and which particular field of science?
No, it is going faster, but it still depends on the product itself. It depends on where are we in the development. But it's true that to get these products faster, there are multiple factors that play a part. So the first one is a regulatory pathway. So, for example, the regulation is very strict still, but We have now some approvals. Like if we see a signal early on in a population of patient, then we get what is called fast track approval. So then patient can get the drug, the community can get the drug faster. So there are ways to get this done. Funding, of course. The more funding you have, the more efficient you can be in getting the drug faster to patients. So there are ways. Regulation is playing a big part, I would say.
I see.
Because we're learning. We're all learning. We're all learning how to improve and how to get these drugs faster to patients.
Now, don't be embarrassed when I ask you this question. You're a typical Suisse romande international in inverted commas. How did you end up here? I mean, what's your story?
So, I'm Lebanese originally. I was born in Germany. My dad was specializing. He was a surgeon at that time. Then we moved back to Lebanon. There was a war, so I was raised in Jordan. At the end, my dad and mom stayed in Jordan, and I was raised there. And then I left. I left to England to do my studies, and then I went to the US, to the National Cancer Institute, because in the cancer field, you really want to go to train in the National Cancer Institute.
And that's a top institute.
That's a top institute in Bethesda. And then after that, I got a very nice, but I stayed there for a while, and then I went to University of Pennsylvania, where actually the immunotherapy was happening. I was on the same floor with the researchers, and specifically Professor Carl June, who actually was one of the 2 or 3 scientists that discovered the CAR T cells, which are now have become the standard of care in blood cancers. And so I remained there for 12 years. And then there was an opportunity to come to Switzerland to build a cancer center in Switzerland and to put all this infrastructure to allow us to have cellular therapy and immunotherapy and experimental therapy available for patients here. And so I've done that for 12 years. I was a chief of service at the CHUV, where we build this experimental therapy.
This is in Lausanne.
In Lausanne. And then, as of last year, I decided to move to Genolier.
Oh, so you've only been here a year or so?
1 year,
I see, okay.
And I established a team to also bring these opportunities to private hospitals, because clinical trials really only, at least what I know in Switzerland, they only exist in these big public hospitals. But private hospitals also have a lot to offer. And here there was a vision to create an infrastructure for clinical research, because we need that. And so this is what I established. And one of the projects is to also establish a cancer vaccine program, which we are working on with the team here.
So fascinating. Now, I must ask you this question, having the opportunity to sit in front of a professional at a very high level like you, but you must be aware of the controversies in one particular country right now about science and medicine. And I want to know how far you think ordinary people should trust science. We have a situation where the richest and most powerful country in the world seems to be going through an anti-science, an anti-expert phase. And I'm referring, I can name him because it's publicly known, one Robert F.K. Jr., who doesn't believe in a lot of this stuff. Do you have a point of view about that?
I mean, science is not a political opinion. You know, science is science. Science is you do your research, and then you let the data speak for itself. So, and we try to interpret the data, but the data really speaks for itself. So maybe science has been communicated poorly. Maybe we need to communicate it better. And all that science has been doing is trying to cure people, advance treatments and innovation. And in fact, without science, we wouldn't have checkpoint blockade inhibitors. I'm talking about immunotherapy. We wouldn't have CAR T cells that are curing children that suffer from leukemia, for example, where 20 years ago this was not possible. The kids at 3 years old would be completely gone by now if it weren't for this new therapy. So problem with science and innovation, okay, it doesn't always work. But when it works, it works. So I really believe it's not a political opinion. It's based on data.
And putting politics to one side, let's look at the commercial aspect. How do you maintain a satisfactory and prudent distance from the influence of pharma and medical device companies who probably have different criteria of success than your own and don't take a professional oath? How does that work in your profession, in your experience?
I mean, our loyalty is first to the patients. So it's always that. Now we need pharma, we need biotechs, we need them because without them we don't have the means to provide these medications to our patients, and they're very essential because they scale up the therapies. So I don't stay independent. I actually work with them, but we try to stick, I would say all scientists, to do our best to develop the best product. And then if pharma or biotech can take this product and scale it up, then I see them as partners more than something else.
And that's not a tense relationship. It's quite a good professional relationship, isn't it?
It is. I mean, from all my experience, it is, because what we do is also we are developing these personalized therapies, which are very costly, which need this infrastructure, which work very well in small settings. But once we prove that these personalized therapies work, then pharma would really, the only people who can take it to the next levels are pharma.
Because of the scale.
Because of the scale. Or what we can try to do, and this is something that is really now something very close to my heart, is to try to democratize these cancer vaccines, try to have a technology that is extremely cheap, really, so that we can take it to the next level. But to go back to your question, I really think they are part of the story. Pharma and biotech are part of the story. We cannot work without them.
I was just curious to know how you saw it, because you must be living with that every day. Lana, we could easily talk much longer. We have to draw to a close now. Thanks for being so patient and expert in your explanations. I've learned a lot. I wish you continued success with the important research work you do. And my guest today has been Professor Lana Kandalaft, Chief of Clinical and Translational Research at the Swiss Medical Network Genolier Innovation Network and Director of the Vaccine Program at the Clinique de Genolier here in Switzerland. Thank you again, Professor.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to the McKay Interview podcast. You can find my show on most of the leading podcast platforms. Plus, the complete playlist dating back to 2012 can be found by writing The McKay Interview into your browser. Thanks again for listening.